Alright, I got the transmission all painted up. Nice and pretty. I just stuck paper towel down in there, put tapes on the input and output shaft. I think it looks pretty good. It'll work for me. But to fix our head studs hitting the push rod, we got a longer push rod. Now, generally, when you check your push rod length, you need the adjustable push rod, which I got around here somewhere. It's probably still down in the motor. It is. Now, when you check your push rod length, you're supposed to paint, or you're supposed to use a light spring. And I just use the springs that are on it. And the reason you do that is because there's a plunger down in those lifters. And if those lifters ain't pumped up, these high pressure springs actually push down on the lifter and throw your reading off. But you can see this was the 7.3 adjustable push rod, and this was the 7.2 that we had on it. That's too low, meaning the push rod was a little too short, what we had been running. And again, you're supposed to use a lighter spring, but the 7.3 puts me right in the middle. Not only that, but the rocker stud was hitting the stud bolt. The rocker arm was hitting the ARP stud bolt, them big. The bolts we had, or the nut, it was hitting the nut, the stud nut. The ARP bolts we had in here before, they were 1/2 inch. The bolt size was 1/2 inch. Whereas the nut side on these ARP bolts, they're 5/8. So, and it was even hard to get a wrench on, or to get a socket on this one. Luckily, I found a shallow well socket that I had that did fit that. But yeah, the 7.3 push rods, they wear better. They're like right in the middle versus the 7.2 over here. So I'm just going to run the 7.3 push rods, and that's going to correct that. And also, the way I checked for those wear marks was I set the rockers. I set the roller rockers with the preload and everything. And then I painted the valve tip first, set the rockers, and then I turned the motor over, and the tip of the rocker arm makes those marks. And again, this was the 7.3, and with the adjustable push rod we had, and that's the 7.2 that we had on there. So it needed a longer push rod anyway. Not only it's going to kill two birds with one stone, it's going to clear that stud and the nut, and it's going to give us a better wear pattern in the middle. And again, you're supposed to do that with a lighter spring, but I don't have a lighter spring, so that's where we're going with. And again, when you put these roller rockers in, there's a flat side and a round side. Flat side goes up, round side goes down, because that's what your poly lock will bolt to. Now, if you have the stamped steel rocker arms, oh, I've got some over there. If you have the stamped steel rocker arms, forgot I had these. Those were actually supposed to go back with that LT1, but oh well. If you have the stamped steel rocker arms, you put those on. You got a washer, it looks like this. Flat side goes up, and on the nut, these are lock nuts. Flat side goes down, rounded end goes up. So just like that, that's how that goes. So I'm gonna go ahead and put all these on, flat side up, since I've already got the push rods pushed down in there. All right, got all the push rods in. Make sure the push rod is down inside the lifter hole. Make sure the push rod's in the rocker arm where it should be. Make sure flat side up on all those, and I'll put the poly locks on them. double checking to make sure all of them were flat side up. Now I'm going to turn the motor over until that exhaust, this side's the exhaust because that side's the intake. The exhaust come up, go down. As it goes down, the intake will come up. It'll go down. Once it, I'm absolutely sure it's all the way down, I'm going to give the motor about 1/8 of a turn. And that makes sure both lifters are on the base circle of the cam. You don't want to set your rocker arms when you're on the low lift part of the cam. You got to be on the base circle of the cam. And I don't know if y'all watched the last video, but my fist is the base circle of the cam. You got 2 lobes. They come around, hit the exhaust, push it up, push it down, hit the intake, push it up, push it down, and then they come and rest on the base circle. And that's where I set it. But now some people, what they'll do is the exhaust starts to hit, they'll set the intake. And then they'll turn it all the way around until the intake's about to close, and then they'll set the exhaust because that'll put it on the base load. These are staggered. On number 1 cylinder, you'll have the exhaust coming up this way on the front, and low in the back. But anyway, that's what I'm gonna do once I get those both on the base circle, exhaust up, down, intake up, down, turn the motor over just a little bit, and then I'll set them both at the same time. Now once I set those, I can turn the motor over 1/4 of a turn and go to the next firing order, 8. Do those. Turn the motor 1/4 turn, set the next one in the firing order, and just keep doing that. 1/4 turn, 1, 8, 4, 3, 6, 5, 7, 2. But yeah. See the exhaust load coming up. Now turn it over and the intake will start to come up. And these are different, so you got to line them up. On that side, the intake's closer to us. On this one, the intake's farther away from us. You just line them up by the intake ports. And you can line them up by the exhaust ports over here too. Alright, exhaust went up, it went down, now the intakes went up. Just turn it over more until the intake goes down, until you turn and the intake ain't going down anymore. And sometimes you gotta put some pressure up here, and sometimes put some pressure right there to push it. Sometimes the lifter just won't go back down by itself, but these link bar lifters, they're so heavy they go down by themselves. I dropped my wrench. All right, let's turn it over some more until the intake goes all the way down and stops moving. And then we'll give it another 1/8 to 1/4 turn. That'll put them both on the base circle. All right, and then we'll unscrew this poly lock to make sure we don't hit the poly lock, the Allen in the middle. I have an idea where they hit at, but now the good thing about poly locks is you'll feel when it hits. But what you're wanting to do is you're wanting to tighten this up and feel for up and down movement in the push rod. You'll grab the push rod and you'll go up and down. See, there's movement. We want just tight enough that there is no up and down movement. So, and like I said, with these poly locks, it's really easy to do. You'll feel it hit. See, right there. No up and down movement on the push rod. And we'll do this other one the same way. No up and down movement. Now, at this point, you would put your wrench on here and you would do 1/4 to a 1/2 turn. And then you can tighten your nut or tighten your Allen up. But now I like to tighten up the Allen and then which you can already do your preload turn, but what I like to do, your 1/4 to 1/2 turn, but what I like to do is I like to tighten the Allen and the nut up at the same time. It like locks them together. And these motors right here that we race, we like to run them light because for some reason they run faster when they're set with not much preload. But so I'll tighten those both together, and it'll give me 1/8 of a turn, which is about where I want to be. I want them to be so light as I can go. Now, down inside those lifters, there's a plunger, and then there's like a retaining clip. You want to make sure that you get enough preload if you're running them light, that you get at least enough preload that that it brings the plunger off that retainer, because if not, that plunger will be beating on that retainer and it could break it. Your lifter could come apart. So, but yeah. So I'll tighten those together, and that'll give me 1/8 of a turn. That'll give me just enough to get it off the plunger, and that's where we run these motors at. But now, if it's a daily driver car that you're going to drive a lot, do your quarter. What I do on those with these is I'll do a quarter a turn, then I'll tighten them both together, which gives me about 3/8 of a turn is usually what I'll do. But I'm just going to tighten those both together, and those are done. And then I'm going to turn the motor over a quarter turn, and I'm going to go to 8. 1, 8, 4, 3, 6, 5, 7, 2. A quarter turn is the next one in the firing order. And then I'll do 8 just like I did this one. I'll turn the motor a quarter turn, go to 4. Do that one just like I did this one. But I still got to tighten those both up at the same time. And 1, 8, 4, 3, 6, 5, 7, 2, just like that. So I'm going to go ahead and finish those. Oh yeah, and on Gen 1 small block Chevy, the cylinders are numbered 1, 3, 5, 7. That's the driver's side, front to back. Passenger side 2, 4, 6, 8. That's how they're numbered. So I turn the motor. I finished those. Number one. Finished both of those. And then I turned it over a quarter turn. Now we're going to 8. 2, 4, 6, 8. Now we're going to 8. Now on these stamped steel deals, you gotta be mindful of your socket, because your socket will hit the sides of the rocker arm, or it'll push down on the washer and it'll throw your reading off. So once you get close, turn it a little bit, take the socket out. You'll need a deep well more than likely. Then check for up and down movement. If you still got up and down movement, put your socket back on there, turn it a little bit more until you feel no up down movement. And then on these right here, these are lock nuts. So once you get no up and down movement in the push rod, just go ahead and do the quarter to half turn, and you're done. Now once you got all those on, you should have about the same amount of threads showing on all of them. And we do. And I checked my clearances, and all looks good. None of them are hitting, so the longer push rod's going to work. Just the only advice I can give on this is make sure you thread chase your your holes in your block for your studs. Make sure that your studs seat all the way in, because they're so the stud part isn't sticking all the way up. And if you, I don't know, in my situation with the right push rod length, what I'm assuming is the right push rod length, like I said, you're supposed to use a weaker spring. They'll clear. But these Scorpions, well, those comp Magnum, I forget what they're called. They're not as thick on the bottom, so they'd probably clear anyway, but we don't have $500 for roller rocker. So this is what we're going to do. Maybe one day we'll get those. They are a good rocker. They're better than these, but with the low 600 lifts, I've had success with these Scorpion roller rockers. My LT1, Gen 1 LT1, it was running low 11s on motor, low 10s on a small shot of nitrous. I was using the same ones, except for I was using a 1.6. But anyway, I'm gonna get the intake gaskets ready. On these intake gaskets, I put this numbered side up. It'll have the blue. And then there's this side. That's the side I'm gonna put on the heads. This side's gonna go to the intake. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a dab of RTV right there, and I'm gonna put a little bit of RTV around the water jacket holes, and then I'm gonna set them on the head as straight as I can get them, and I'm gonna let it dry. I'm gonna let that RTV dry. That way, when I put the intake on there, it'll when I put the intake on there, the gaskets won't move. And you get a distributor gasket and some China wall gaskets. These China wall gaskets, I do not use those. I throw them in the garbage. I use a bead of silicone on the China walls on the front and back. But yeah. Oh, and also, these holes are offset some. You'll notice how this one's closer to the intake runner than this one. So there's no way to put that on wrong. It won't let you, because if you flip it up this way, these two bolt holes won't line up no matter what head you put it on. But anyway, yeah. Alright. I lined everything up the best I could. And we'll just let that RTV set up a little. And then we'll put a bead of RTV across there and across there. And we can drop the intake on.
Camera in here and making sure that I got a good gap of, or a good thing of RTV all the way across the gap. And doing the same thing across the back here. Kind of hard to get the camera in this area.
Alright, I put the RTV on there, on the China walls, front and back. You can see it down in the distributor hole. And then I set the intake on it as straight as I could. And I just hand tighten the bolts a little. I'm gonna let that RTV set up. Once the RTV sets up on the China walls, then I'll go ahead and finish it, torquing it down. When you put that intake on there, make sure you don't got no wires in the way. Everything looks good. And I'm not going to mess with it no more than that. I'm going to let that set up. It's cold outside. Take a while for it to set up. And tomorrow we'll come out here and torque it down.